Hello and welcome to another A Tippling Philosopher video. Just a short one tonight. I'm going to talk about this idea that a commenter said, I think on one of the YouTube videos, which is religion is rather like a predator. And I thought that's really interesting, so I thought I'd dwell on this just for a short while. So think about a pride of lions and a herd of antelope. And you think, right, what happens in nature is that the pride will go for the easy kill, the kill that requires the least amount of energy to be expended. So the slowest animals that they need to chase after, the weakest animals, which will be the youngest animals and the oldest animals and the most infirm animals. And I think there's a really interesting analogy here to say that, is it a case that religion preys upon the youngest, the oldest and the most infirm? And by infirm here I mean those who think the least critically. And by this I then mean that, let's take the young to begin with. So religion is and God belief is a thing that happens to a good many people when they're young. And this is a way of, and I've talked about this plenty before, this is a way of bypassing the critical thinking veto system. So what happens is you learn about, say, Noah's Ark and the Noah's Flood. And you learn about this from the age of zip onwards, and you see cartoons, you hear songs, you just over and over hear the repetition of the narrative and all these things. And you have your elders and your parents and people in authority telling you this story and confirming this story. And it's not until maybe you're 12, 13, 15 onwards that you start really understanding what is plausible and implausible in the world. You start understanding that sort of a global flood might not be particularly plausible. You maybe start thinking that, or at least you would be thinking otherwise, that it's ridiculous to imagine all animals around the world traveling across the world to meet in the ancient Near East and go onto some massive farmyard boat and all these kind of things. Like, you would normally be thinking that this is quite an incredible set of claims. In other words, you start learning what is implausible and separating what is implausible from what is plausible. And you do that, and then you go through life using that metric to evaluate different claims. But the problem is that things like the Noah's Flood claim is already positioned itself in your mind and is part of your cultural baggage, and it bypasses that veto system. In other words, you will apply this metric to other claims outside of your own belief system, but you won't apply it to claims already comfortably ensconced in your own mind and in your own belief system. And therefore, religion works really well when it hits people young, because they take these things on board unquestioningly, and then they start having to defend it once they understand what is plausible and implausible, or they either don't need to defend it to themselves because it's just already in there, or if other people start criticizing as they get older, they find mechanisms to defend that. In other words, religion has in some sense preyed upon a very gullible mind that is able to be convinced effectively by elders and people in authority and all the mimetic frameworks around them, the songs and the repetition, so on and so forth. And so religion has preyed successfully on the young and is very much able to do so. Then you look at maybe the old, as you are recognizing your own mortality and you start becoming afraid of death, and you're given promises of an eternal afterlife, so that actually it doesn't end here in my imminent death, that life will go on in some different manner and I will transcend my earthly life to exist in heaven, and some kind of soul, something about me will maintain over time and space, or not space. And that's really attractive, right? That gives you kind of hope and ultimate purpose and ultimate meaning, and all these things that religious people bandy about, all these terms. But you can see that can be attractive. That's effectively the most ultimate bribe you can ever imagine, because there is nothing greater in human conception than heaven. And so as you get older, religion can prey upon your worries and your terror of dying. This is called terror management theory. That's why I use the word terror. Your mortality salience, your understanding of your own mortality. And yeah, I'm not saying this applies to all children or all adults, but there is definitely, in the same way that a pride of lions will sometimes get a healthy antelope. It just so happens that it might trip and they get it, or something happens where they just combine in a perfect way to grab a really healthy antelope. But often it's the young, it's the old and the infirm. What do I mean by infirm in this analogy? And remember, this is just an analogy. I think it's just an interesting and perhaps useful way to think about the way that a religion can successfully nourish itself with new followers. It's just a metaphor, but I like it. So what do I mean by infirm? I mean people who just can't think critically enough. That's going to sound like a conceited atheist going, well, I think critically and you religious people don't. Well, actually, I do think that to a large degree, as I would, because, and religious people would say this of atheists, because no one goes through life thinking, do you know what? I don't think critically. I think really badly. I'm really bad at thinking. I'm not very critical at all. I believe anything, but that's cool. No one really does that. So everyone thinks that they think critically, and people who believe differently to them are the ones who don't think critically. So of course I'm going to say that. But I do genuinely also, think that I've got good evidence to suggest that as an atheist, I have thought more critically than most religious, of the vast majority of religious people. And I've written books to support that claim, and there's an awful lot of psychology to defend that thesis as well. So the idea is that those who are infirm, and I don't mean physically infirm, I mean, as I say, critical analysis and critical thinking, and are prone to confirmation bias and loads of cognitive biases and problematic mental heuristics, sort of methods of thinking, mechanisms within their brain or their mind. I think that religious people are more prone to that kind of thing, motivated thinking. Like, I want to believe this is true, going back to heaven and hell. I want this to be true because I get heaven and I avoid hell. Okay, so I'm being bribed. So I have a huge vested interest in believing this religious set of claims to be true. And that is going to affect the way a religious person evaluates data and thinks critically. When you have all of these things going on in the back of someone's mind, or in the forefront of someone's mind, it clouds their judgment and means that they don't think critically. They become sort of cognitively infirm. And I don't mean that, some kind of insult, but I do genuinely think that is a good way to understand, and hopefully by writing the books I do and doing the videos I do, I'm addressing why this is the case in certain different scenarios. But I think those people then, I think the young are susceptible to be preyed upon by religion. I think the old are susceptible to be preyed upon by religion, and I think the cognitively infirm are susceptible to be preyed upon by religion. And I think most, people who are, I debated with Jonathan McClatchy about extraordinary claims on the Unbelievable radio show just a couple of weeks ago. And what I really wanted to start talking about was why did you convert to Christianity? What did you bring to the table when you were evaluating these claims? And what was, I would suggest he would have an interesting conversion story, or story about how he came to be a believer that would involve, I'd imagine, quite a good deal of psychology, whether he believed from a child because he brought up in a family environment where the truth of religion was at the forefront, the supposed truth of religion, or whether he came to believe in some kind of moment of psychological insecurity or something or other. I don't want to, I am armchair psychoanalyzing, but my point would be that even someone who is outwardly, he talks about Bayesian reasoning. He's a clever guy, right? He's not cognitively infirm in the sense that he's stupid or unintelligent or whatever. What I mean is that he has susceptibilities to the being preyed upon by religion. There's that something happened, or it happened when he was young, and he's been inculcated into belief. So I think, as my point there is, that even clever people that outwardly seem cognitively healthy will have an interesting set of psychological infirmities and cognitive infirmities that make them predisposed to belief in religion. Again, I'm generalizing, but I wonder if this is a useful analogy. Let me know what you think in the comments as to whether this is a useful analogy, that religion preys upon people and is successful because it can catch and devour the minds of those who are young, those who are old, and those who are cognitively infirm. There you go. Anyway, question everything, particularly what I say, but most especially what you believe. And thanks for your support. Please like, subscribe, share, and do all that stuff. And until next time, goodbye.